As Israel resumes large-scale offensive in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis has worsened dramatically. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, with many more others wounded. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and thousands of displaced Palestinians are being forced to move once again. Meanwhile, the Israeli government claims that these strikes will lead to the release of more detainees. However, the motivation behind this escalation is questionable, with the probability that Netanyahu may be using the war to shore up his own political power and appease right-wing allies. The question remains, what really is behind this renewed offensive? Is Israel's military action motivated by politics? And how will the international community respond to these ongoing violations of international law? Welcome to In Depth. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the deadly airstrikes that ended a fragile truce war were only the beginning, indicating that intense attacks on the Gaza Strip would not stop. As reported by the New York Times, the attacks followed weeks of fruitless negotiations aimed at extending the fragile ceasefire, which paused 15 months of devastating fighting in the Strip. Netanyahu recently stated that from now on, negotiations will only be led under fire, suggesting that talks could potentially continue, but Israel attacks on Hamas would not stop. Meanwhile, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Israel has consulted the White House before launching the strikes. Netanyahu's real aim behind the Israelis' operation in Gaza is to achieve a series of urgent political goals: restoring Ben Gvir to the government, passing the budget, and shoring up his coalition, as highlighted by the Haaretz. The newspaper noted that Israel knowingly violated the ceasefire agreement with Hamas with the American approval because it doesn't want to fully meet the terms it had been committed to 2 months ago exactly. It was Israel's government that failed to uphold the agreement by not completing the promised withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, the newspaper added. Moreover, Netanyahu's true objectives seems evident: a steady shift toward an authoritarian-style regime, which will not try to secure through continuous warfare on multiple fronts.
Israel launched large-scale airstrikes on Gaza, leading to hundreds of casualties. The renewed Israeli aggression that had shattered the ceasefire requires questions about Israel's true motives behind this escalation. Netanyahu's government claims that military action is necessary to bring back detainees. However, families of Israeli detainees have condemned the resumption of the war, saying it puts their lives at risk. Moreover, an Israeli detainee was killed, and 2 others are injured in an Israeli airstrike on Gaza, suggesting that the safety of detainees is not the priority of the Israeli government. Palestinian authorities report hundreds of civilian losses, including women and children, in a matter of hours, with the death toll continues to rise. Amid these strikes, many families are displaced once more. The United Nations has condemned the violence, calling it a violation of international law. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement following the attacks that if Hamas doesn't release all detainees, the gates of hell will open in Gaza. Netanyahu's political allies are pushing for continued military actions, citing the need for total victory over Hamas. The political and humanitarian costs are mounting. Israel's ceasefire agreement, reached in January, collapsed, and renewed violence now threatens to worsen the already devastating situation in Gaza. The timing of the offensive raises questions. Is Netanyahu using the war to secure political power and evade legal repercussions?
And for more analysis, we're joined from Occupied Jerusalem by Munir Nusayba, the international law professor. Welcome, sir, to our program.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nusayba, in the actions in Gaza, can we classify the resumption as a violation of international law, the attacks killed
for exchanging prisoners with Hamas? Since then, they have been expressing frequently and repeatedly that they intend eventually to evacuate the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, to forcibly displace the Palestinian population from the Gaza Strip, and to construct a colony, an Israeli colony there. This is, this seems to be the true intention of Israel, and they never wanted to stop the war altogether and to cease the fire. Every expression they made since that agreement has been all about only prisoner exchange and releasing the Israeli hostages from the Gaza Strip. But other than that, it seems that the Israeli government has no interest in, in allowing the Gaza Strip to be reconstructed. Hence, this war and this renewed attack on the Gaza Strip is, a renewal of the Israeli genocidal war. They have also stopped humanitarian aid and goods from entering the Gaza Strip. People are going back to hunger, to trying to find the most basic needs and survival needs in the Gaza Strip, and unfortunately, that's a very difficult task now. That is preventing food and other
but sir, this took place before Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided to, of course, violate the ceasefire and start striking Gaza again and the civilians in Gaza and killing people again. Since the cutting off of the electricity and since deciding not to let humanitarian aid and food into Gaza, he started and he's been violating and he didn't stop. But this new attack that's taking place, sir, why did the Israeli government backtrack on the ceasefire agreement? Of course, it was a fragile one, and restart the war.
His government is very right-wing. He himself is extreme right-wing as well. He does not want to continue with any ceasefire or, of course, not to mention peace. He insists on completing his plan in the Gaza Strip, which involves displacing the Palestinian population from there and opening it for, for colonial greeds. Unfortunately, this new attack is a continuation of the Israeli war crimes and crimes against humanity. It's a continuation of the genocide, and it's a confirmation that Israel wants to continue this genocide in the Gaza Strip, which is being currently investigated in the International Court of Justice in the South Africa versus Israel case, but also many other violations that Israel is conducting now in the Gaza Strip are also being investigated in the International Criminal Court. And I believe that in the same way that now Netanyahu and Gallant have, arrest warrants, effective arrest warrants against them issued
Got your
by
point,
the court.
Mr. Nusayba. I'll be back to you again. And we're now joined from Ramallah by Yasser Manna, Israeli Affairs expert. A very warm welcome, sir. And Mr. Manna, what do you think Netanyahu's decision to escalate airstrikes in Gaza? Of course, sir, at a very critical moment, which is the holy month of Ramadan, and as people are getting ready for festives, and is this, sir, the most important part of the question, politically motivated? And what does this mean for his government, especially after far-right Minister Ben-Gvir and his party will return to the government, coinciding with the resumption of the war?
Greeting to you and the dear viewers. No doubt that Israel is going to the second phase of pressuring the Palestinians amidst the negotiations or the paving the way for the negotiations of the second phase. Israel since weeks blockaded Gaza, hindered the access of the humanitarian aid machinery and all the necessities for the Gaza Strip. But this is the first phase. The second phase started yesterday, targeting the civilians in Gaza Strip in a bid to pressure the Palestinians and the Palestinian negotiators to accept the Israeli vision, which is the extension of the first phase. In addition to making a marginal detainees exchange during the second phase, as Israel doesn't wish to execute the second phase that is stipulated the full withdrawal of Gaza Strip and ending the war, and Israel isn't ready for that, and as do not wish for the Palestinians to govern Gaza, and therefore it is continue to conduct the genocide in a bid to reaching a vision.
Mr. Manna, as the Israeli government, is the Israeli government's argument about detainees' releases credible, or is Netanyahu seeking to strengthen his coalition government and domestic political standing at the expense of gambling with their lives, especially that reportedly a detainee was killed in an Israeli strike, sir?
Since the beginning of the war, practically Israel never paid any attention to the prisoners by targeting Gaza randomly. That led to the killing of several of the hostages. So the issue of the hostages for the Israeli government is used based on the propaganda, as the Israel only wants their own interest by staying in the government, meaning if a state for the second phase, Smotrich should withdraw from the government, and therefore the government will be exposed for the collapse. But we've already seen yesterday that he's coming back to the government, trying to correct and fix the internal differentiations and disagreements on the account of the lives of the Palestinians.
Okay, Mr. Nusayba, how should international bodies respond to the repeated violations of the laws of war, especially with regarding to the protection of civilians who are facing, sir, a genocidal war? And it's worth to mention here that Israel has been, of course, violating the ceasefire before this violation, the recent ceasefire, or the ending of the ceasefire, sir, for 100, and that they've been killing 175 civilians throughout the 2 months, sir, since the 19th of January, since the ceasefire was brokered by the United States and Egypt and Qatar, of course.
Israel has continued to violate international law in this severe manner only because of the impunity that it has enjoyed over the past decades and also the past years and months. Israel has been violating international law quite severely. It has committed a genocide. It has committed apartheid, as confirmed by the International Court of Justice. It violates, it's committing a lot of other crimes. The torture that Israel is committing in its prisons is unimaginable. At the same time, the international community is still refraining from applying sanctions.
Why is it still refraining, sir, from applying sanctions? Why?
Well, first, in the United Nations Security Council, there is a veto power that that the United States is enjoying, and the United States is certainly complicit with Israel in its violations against international law. The United Nations General Assembly has already called for action. So has the UN Human Rights Council, which the US has withdrawn from actually quite with the Trump administration. So there are calls for sanctions. There are calls for, that Israel should start facing consequences of its human rights violations and war crimes and crimes against humanity. But it's unfortunately taking time. There is some lack of willingness from many of the Western countries specifically to see Israel punished for the crimes that it is continuously committing. I think this is our main problem. Our main problem is the double standards that we keep facing. The fact that that many countries, are happy to see, certain countries like Russia, for example, punished for its occupation, but not Israel. They feel that Israel is an ally of the West, and therefore should continue to enjoy this impunity. I believe that this should stop, and there are many calls for this to stop. You might remember also how Trump, as soon as he assumed his office, decided to sanction the International Criminal Court, which is a very weird concept. How can a state sanction a court? A court is supposed to sanction those who commit war crimes and not vice versa. So the United States is abusing its power in a way that allows war crimes and crimes against humanity to continue.
Mr. Manea, how significant is the involvement of the United States administration in this renewed escalation, specifically, sir? And did Israel receive the green light from the United States to resume its aggression?
Since October the 7th, the United States of America is practicing two roles. The first one is that in participating in this war through the militarily, intel, and financial expert, and therefore Israel has got the green line from the U.S. administration that threatened on the statements of Trump that would open the hell gates upon Gaza. So that would make Israel to continue the hostilities. From the other side, United States is practicing the mediator, but the mediators which should lead the truce that lasted the first phase only made by the American pressure for Israel to accept such a proposal. But it is notably noticed that the U.S. has interest in the region and do not wish for the war in Gaza and such airstrikes as we've seen previously. So we've seen the Israeli behaviors in the Gaza Strip is totally different with respect to operation. So not with an intensive as we've seen in the genocide. So U.S. wishes
Sir, excuse
for
me.
Israel to go.
Did Israel receive the green light from the United States deliberately this time, sir, for this aggression to resume again? Yes or no?
I think that she had the green light from the United States of America, as Israel do not wish to do or violate the ceasefire agreement signed by sponsorship by the U.S. Without the approval of the United States of America. And as we've seen, that is going direct and the threats of the United States President that they wish to open the hell of the gate on Gaza.
That was Mr. Ramannea, Israeli affairs expert, and Munir Nusayba, the international law professor. Thank you very much for your valuable insights and your valuable informative knowledge. And of course, the question remains, what is really behind this renewed offensive this time that took place, of course, on Tuesday night? Is Israel's military action motivated by politics? How will the international community respond to these ongoing violations of international laws? This brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up here on Qnews.